A real crime. In a series of podcasts, I want you to travel down some lonely roads with me. These are the roads I traveled with families who never got to say goodbye to loved ones. These family members were fated to live the rest of their lives waiting and wondering. I wrote these stories when I worked as a reporter for the Charleston Gazette. A Real Crime, Episode 2. I was a child in Fayette County when I heard adults talk about missing men and someone they called the Mad Butcher. As a reporter years later, I tracked down the man I believed to be that killer and prepared to interview him. It was a surreal experience. I had my notes that I had been working on ahead of time. I knew what I wanted to ask the man I believed to be the Mad Butcher. I even had copies of letters he wrote to people I knew. But when he picked up the phone, I had to suppress those instinctive childhood fears for a few minutes as I heard his voice. I was speaking to the suspect while he was a patient in a Dayton, Ohio mental hospital. I started by asking him about the death of President John Kennedy. From his letters, I knew Kennedy's death affected him. He told me he was asleep in bed when the phone rang. His cousin called to tell him Kennedy had been shot. He turned on the television to see the events unfold. I was so shocked, he told me. I went into mourning for about 2 weeks. I could not shave or bathe. He told me he had served in the Air Force starting in 1950 in Bryan, Texas. When we talked, he was living in Dayton, Ohio, and he said he enjoyed visiting the Air Museum in Dayton. He began to tell me the world is divided between those who are sacrifices and those who are executioners. If you're born a sacrifice, he explained, that meant you would be butchered. His father, he told me, was a sacrifice and was butchered. When I asked him if there was any way to stop the killing, he said no, people are bloodthirsty. He also said it's international, this thing of being a sacrifice. No one can be warned about it, and no one can prevent it, he said. He told me he'd been in and out of the hospital since 1964 after he killed a doctor. But the doctor he told me he butchered, I knew to be alive at the time I was talking with the suspect. He talked freely about men he was forced to cut up before they killed him. Each time he discussed these killings, he said they happened in a Texas hospital morgue. He gave vivid accounts of 4 killings that matched details of some of the killings in Fayette County, West Virginia in the early 1960s that came to be known as the Mad Butcher case. When he described the killings in the morgue, he said he woke up, found himself naked except for a tag on his toe. He was going to be killed, he said, so he killed. He was a prime suspect in the killings and disappearances of 7 men. He was never arrested for murder, but he was arrested for destruction of property in 1966 when he took a sledgehammer to the Montgomery Hospital. He said he has been in and out of hospital since that time. He also told me he maintained an apartment in Dayton and that his name and number were listed in the phone book. He said he was allowed to go to the apartment on the first and third Tuesday of each month. He said he could be released again soon. A letter the Gazette obtained that was written by the suspect's doctor stated that the doctor had been treating him for a year and a half. The doctor wrote that the suspect, quote, acted in ways that could be construed as threatening. I have no documentation of him ever physically affronting anyone, end quote. The suspect told me that he was afraid to be a sacrifice. God Almighty is all the protection I need. That's all the help I want. He said God helped him to survive several attacks in the past. The authorities make you kill, he told me. He said he also believes he's killed 10 people. The authorities are government people and church people and other high-ups, he said. He believes his father was a sacrifice and butchered by a doctor. I was 13 years old at the time, he told me. I was just getting old enough to realize what killing meant. He went on to tell me he tried to prevent the killing, but the authorities voted to kill his father. He also told me that his father was cut in half and had red-hot irons stuck in him. Then they put his father in a carnival sideshow. Finally, they brought him back to the hospital where his brain was cut out. He also named 2 different people as his biological mother and father, not the people listed on his birth certificate. We talked about the woman he was in love with when he was young. He told me his young love was actually 2 people. He said at times she tried to fool him with her double. Several times when he talked about the killings he was forced to commit, he said he was under the influence of hypnotic drugs. His voice was strong and friendly, his memory for dates and names and details clear. "Are you going to do a story about this?" he asked me. "Yes," I said. "Do you think that will help stop the killing?" "I wouldn't touch this story with a 10-foot pole if I was a reporter," he told me. This suspect died in Dayton, Ohio, August the 30th, 1997, at age 69. No one has ever been charged with any of the murders attributed to the Mad Butcher.